Welcome to Rossman Radio, the podcast where we dive deep into the journeys of entrepreneurs, founders, and e-commerce brands that are breaking through the noise and scaling like never before. I'm Alysse, and Rossman Media is a trend-forward social media agency specializing in going viral and delivering 10x returns for the brands that we work with. Each week, I'll sit down with industry disruptors to talk about the highs, the lows, and the exact strategies that help them grow from their first sale to multi-million-dollar milestones. If you're ready to unlock what it really takes to win on social, build a community, and multiply your revenue, then you're in the right place. Let's get into it. Welcome back to Rossman Radio, the #1 podcast for all things marketing, social media, and entrepreneurship. Today, we're talking with Justin Davies. He owns the company Weddit, and you're going to be learning not just about his journey, but how he's overcame copycats and so much more in the marketing landscape. Welcome, Justin.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So when did you first realize that your product was being copied when you first started out, and what was your initial reaction to it?
Well, the copies kind of started probably within the first year or two, I think, which was we started launching in 2014. And to give my wife credit, my wife is really the brains and the beauty. I just happen to be the glue. So she's the owner.
I love a husband and wife duo.
Yes, she's the owner. She's the best boss I've ever had. So I would say 2 to 3 years within us launching, we had copycats that were getting it from the same source or the same country. I would say it's been in the past 2 years though. So probably by 2022 to 2023 is when we started seeing the copycats out of China. And I would say China is the biggest threat because they just do what we would refer to as suicide pricing. And, there's a lot of times diversification is really the only way you can combat that kind of thing, coming out with other products that complement the Weddit, things of that nature. And that's kind of what we've had to do up to this point. Of course, now with the tariffs, we're kind of excited to see how we can kind of at least have a level playing field and try to recapture some market share.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. And talk to us a little bit about how the tariffs are essentially going to work as sort of like an advantage, right? For anyone that is having an issue with copycats coming out of China.
So, I mean, just as an example, landed costs or FOB cost out of China for, say, this product that would be printed in China. So it comes out of Europe, goes to China, gets printed, and comes back to the United States. That FOB cost is somewhere between 25 to 35 cents. Okay. It's roughly about double or a little more double than that FOB coming out of Europe. So when you have no tariff on something coming out of China at that FOB cost, you obviously can be much more competitive. Yeah. So when you have a tariff of 145%, now all of a sudden companies have no reason to buy out of China. I just talked to a company last week, a very popular brand that used to buy sponge cloths out of China. And now they're like, it's not worth it. We would like to consider working with you. I'm in negotiations with a very large, retailer, Buc-ee's, who was threatening the China flag at us and saying we could probably buy it from China last year. Now we kind of have a little more leverage because there's no reason to buy from China. In fact, it'd probably even be potentially more expensive to buy out of China. So now we kind of are able to have more pricing power with companies like that. So that's really the effect it has on companies like us. I understand most of the industry is based out of China, but for companies like us, we're kind of like cheering this on because at least we have some level of fairness. Yeah, I mean, and that's incredible too. I think that, like you said, a lot of companies are not in that position, but it is interesting to see, especially because you go through Europe and not China, and it can be a lot more advantageous for you. Would you say that dealing with copycats shaped your approach pretty competitively early on? Well, early on, you kind of, in a way, you kind of need to know what your competitors are doing, but in a way, you kind of have to don't get too stressed out about it. You have to just chart your own path. And you have to just double down on your brand and just be committed to your brand. You're the original, authentic brand. And, people are going to try to mimic you and copy you as long as you're in business. That's just the way it is. And so you just kind of have to reinvent yourself all the time. You have to constantly remold what your image, who you are, stay true to who you are. Don't jeopardize your ethics or your morals. Matilda and I are Christians, and we try to treat people the way we would want to be treated. And there's not a lot of competition on the golden rule in this space. There's plenty of people to knock you off and backstab you. But when you have a vendor such as us that really just wants to treat people the way you want to be treated, that goes a long way. And so that's what we try to stay true to. But it is probably the reason why we are ranked in the top 10 in the eco-friendly space in GiftBeat catalog. It's a survey of stores that survey what's the best category in eco-friendly, what's the best category in kitchen-related, all these different categories. And we've ranked in the top 10 6 years in a row. So we just have to stay true to that. And again, with these tariffs, hopefully we will be recapturing some market share.
Yeah. And can you share your experience pitching to big box stores and trying to get more of that market share?
I'm actually doing that some right now. I'm reaching out. I just reached out to Walmart because we had a copycat that really, Walmart likes to use, like their own brand. They don't really import that themselves necessarily, at least in our case. They use some third-party guy that will be willing to private label their brand for them, import it for them, and do all the legwork. And we had, a copycat that was very similar to ours. It was like a say, for instance, this is one of the round series cloths. This is a sunflower, but in this particular instance, this was a lemon, and it's about 9.5 inches in diameter. We came out with that in 2020. Well, last year, Walmart had a lemon, but it was like maybe 6.5 inches wide instead of 9.5. So we addressed it with them, addressed it with legal, and told them we're not really good. We're not really good with that. Kind of left it at that, and now we're kind of approaching some of the companies like Walmart and just say, look, it's probably not, advantageous for you to get from China anymore. Why don't you just work with us? We'll see where it goes. I don't really hang my hat too much on the big box. They come and go. You don't really want to base your company off of big box. That's why we're trying to focus more on direct to consumer sales and have more control on our Amazon, on TikTok, on our Shopify. We're trying to convert at least 50 to 60% of our revenue to direct to consumer sales.
Okay. Yeah. That definitely makes a lot more sense, especially when you have a lot of copycats going into the big box stores too, where they're going to focus on obviously the cheapest they can get the product. So I think it's important to definitely be diversifying the revenue and kind of diving into how you are attacking the direct-to-consumer market. I know you've worked with several agencies. We're obviously an agency. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you've encountered along the way?
So an agency is not your investment firm. It's not like, calling your investor and say, hey, I'm going to give you, 50 grand. I want it to, add 5% per year. And you just kind of walk away and let them do their thing. I'm learning that agencies are a dime a dozen. You can get them on Upwork. You can get them all over the place. They're on your social media feed. They're all over the place. And some of the agencies we've used focused on maybe the ads or focused on return on ad spend, but they weren't focused on, is your website optimized? Do you have the right amount of social proof on your website? Do you have, video content of being featured on Good Morning America or Paula Deen or the Pioneer Woman or different things that give you status, that give your brand recognition, reviews, for instance. A lot of the agencies we've worked with never, really focused on that. They never really focused on, I look at your website as kind of like a dragnet. Mm-hmm. You can send all the fish you want to that dragnet, but if the dragnet has holes, it's just going to go right through. And your net is basically a function of your conversion rate. So that's one of the biggest mistakes we made early on with agencies, and we're with an agency now, and we just started with them, that really focuses on the whole picture, because really in the D2C space, it's like an engine. Every little component of the engine matters. The tires have to spin, the tires have to be inflated. The oil has to be changed, the belts have to work, everything has to work together, and it can't just be one little piece of it. And I think that's the biggest thing that we fell into, early on, is just looking at one piece of things and just expecting the agency just to handle it all without us being engaged in the whole process.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And honestly, that's what we thrive on too. We look for people that are actually looking for that kind of relationship. So, there are, like you said, like agencies are a dime a dozen, and we have to battle that every day. And there's also agencies out there that will take in your money and will just go hire someone off of Upwork to do the work. And then you're not really getting a personalized approach or really knowing who's building your brand in the first place. And we really value business owners that do view it kind of very similarly to the mindset that you have, where this is a partnership. And by partnership, I mean, we can't just be your outsourced media team that you don't, really talk to or understand what we're doing. The more we can work hand in hand, the more successful our relationship is going to be, and the better the results are going to be. And, agencies out there will charge a lot less than we charge, and will have minimal effort, and they'll just focus on, maintaining the status quo and keeping a certain ROAS, and that's good for them. However, when it comes down to actually scaling a business profitably, it does take going the extra mile every single week on every single aspect of the campaign to actually scale a business and be a real partner, not just an outsourced marketing team. So I definitely can appreciate how you're approaching that. So you mentioned how you typically vet marketing partners, and I know that you mentioned the website and really understanding the review side of things. But once you're talking to them, I'm sure everyone's showing you, a fancy deck, promising you the world. When you get to that stage with an agency, what are some red flags that you see, and maybe some green flags?
It's kind of hard, because I would love to find an agency, and I haven't found one yet, that would say, look, it's not going to cost you anything for 6 months. Let us prove to you that we will, create this huge value for your company. And then at the end, you pay me what you would have owed me for 6 months. I haven't found that agency yet. If you found one, that'd be great, because every agency wants money up front. It's okay. It is what it is. That would be the best thing. But anyway, I think for me, what converted me, no pun intended, clever converters, what converted me to this company was the owner was almost acted like my professor. He was pretty much telling me, look, I want to work with companies that are serious. I don't want to work with a company that I might charge them every month, but they're going to take a week to get information back to me. I want a company that's serious. He said, believe it or not, there are companies that just want to treat this like a hobby. I want to work with companies that want to grow. And if you don't want to grow, get out. And I am going to increase my pricing every year because I'm worth that much. So while I wouldn't say it that way and sounds a little egotistical, it's confident. It builds confidence that this guy is serious. And, before his introductory call, he said, watch this YouTube video of how we work. And if you don't watch this YouTube video, then we might just cancel the call. And what he's trying to do is he's almost like acting like he's hiring me instead of the other way around, which kind of is an oxymoron. But in another sense, it gave me the understanding that he is serious about growing companies. He's not serious about charging credit cards. And that alone kind of got me like, this guy's worth it. Now, I will say the real way I learned how to vet a little bit was because I went through a coaching program from another company last year, which cost me a lot of money, about 10 grand. And the company's called BM Digital, or Influencer Advantage. I'm technically still going through that program. The problem was I had to do all the steps myself. But what it did do is it trained me on what are the steps. What is the whole path that you take a consumer from cold to hot to buying? What are your USPs? How's your marketing set up? How is your website set up? Is your website optimized? How do you measure your website? It took me through the whole process, and it gave me the understanding that I've got to look at this as a complete engine. So when I met an agency that approached it that way, because I don't have the time to do all those things, it gave me the confidence to at least move forward. And the jury's still out whether it's going to work, but it gave me that confidence to go forward with them. I hope that makes sense.
Oh, it makes so much sense. It's exactly like the same approach that we have. And honestly, if someone is not willing to take 3 minutes and watch the video that we've put together or to fill out the information we need, then trying to be picky or anything like that. But it's formulated so that we can actually do research, take time, oftentimes a couple of hours to sort of audit the company prior to the very first call. So we can actually know, okay, what they're all about and whether or not they're going to even be a good fit for what we're looking for. Because it's really difficult. We say this before any partnership. We won't take someone on if they can't handle multi-touch points a week. That doesn't mean that we're giving them homework, but we need to have easy access, whether it's a text message, a Slack message, where if we need to hop on a trend, when we need your approval for things, it's definitely like a collaboration where we integrate almost every client directly into Slack because it's just the easiest way to communicate. But it's almost like we're signing on with you, and we're doing this a lot of work in order to get things going, and a lot of that does happen up front. So we need that commitment back. And we're here to take everything off the plate. We're going to give 110 to it, but we're now an employee of your company. That's how we view it. Like, we are your marketing department. So, include us in the company-wide emails, include us in the company-wide meetings that you guys have that even aren't having to do with marketing. And those are the best relationships too. Those are the relationships that actually grow. And by grow, I mean, we're able to do really good work.
Right.
Okay. So to close out here, what would be your number one piece of advice for an entrepreneur that is just kind of starting out?
Well, I never really wanted to be in business. I wanted to have I'm an engineer, so I wanted to work for some company, have a nice stable job, have a couple children, white picket fence, Toyota Corolla, and life was good. I mean, so I never really initially wanted this career. I would say first you got to know whether you want to do that, whether you really want the risk, really want the challenge, because it is a challenge. And sometimes you feel like you're on the end of a branch and you're kind of like, is this really going to work? And especially when you have employees that depend on you, that puts another level of responsibility. Obviously my loyalty is to God first, to my family second, and to my employees third. And so I guess you just have to know whether you're really up for it. I think that would be the first thing you need to ask yourself. Are you up to being knocked off a bunch of times? Are you up to failing several times and learning from those mistakes? Because a lot of the things I'm sharing with you now come from just probably paying for several people's Cadillacs. I mean, it just, I tell my employees that you will never make a more expensive mistake than I've made. You learn by making mistakes, and you have to be willing to get up and learn from it and see how to make the path forward. I would say look for look for a niche industry if you can. Try not to be a generalist, try to be a niche. I mean, that's why we are the Wet It brand, and that's what you do with it. You wet it, and it's the noun is the verb, the subject's the verb, and it kind of sticks. And that's what we that's what kind of took off with us. Everybody knows us as Wet It. They don't know us as Scruba, even though that's another brand. They don't know us as Swedish Treasures. They know us as Wet It. And so you have to stay true to that. I would say also, you will never have competition on the golden rule. There are so many people out there that are in for the quick dollar and don't care what their conscience is telling them at night if they have one. So I try to go to bed every night knowing I treated people the way I'd want to be treated. And I think even though a lot of times I've been taken advantage of because of that attitude, at least I can go to bed knowing I did the right thing. And I think you cannot buy integrity. It's something something you either have or you don't have. And people will know real quickly whether you're that kind of person. I'll give you one quick story and then I'll end here. So several years ago, we had a customer that, this is wholesale side of things. We needed to get a product to them by a certain time. And we didn't get it to them in time. And then we got it to them and then it was wrong. So it was like 2 strikes. It was I just felt so bad. So I just told the customer, I said, look, first of all, we didn't get it to you in time. Secondly, we got the wrong product to you. So what we're going to do, we're just going to give you the product. Just take it. I can't even good conscience charge you for this product. So later on, we were at a trade show at the International Housewares Association show in Chicago. And this lady walks up to me and she says, oh, I'm such and such with such and such a store. And I said, man, there's hundreds of you. She says, don't you remember me? I said, no, I don't. She said, you're the vendor that made a mistake twice on my order. And I'm like, well, that's really good to be remembered that way. No. You felt so bad about it. You gave it to me for free. And I tell everybody about you. No marketing can buy that.
No.
So
no marketing can buy that. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. What a very moving story. And honestly, people love buying from brands that are doing good. And you certainly have that. So I hope your media team is on it and really capitalizing on that side of your business, because at least in your content, because I mean, you can just tell the genuine side of things and how honest you guys are. I'm looking forward to see this take off, and thank you so much for your time and for sharing all of this with us today.
Sure, no problem. I look forward to another episode if you so desire. I hope you have a blessed day, okay?